The Daily Telegraph provided 1,000 guineas for George Smith to go out to Iraq and to find the missing piece, as if it was as easy as that. But he did actually go to Nineveh twice, and he did find a missing piece of the flood story, believe it or not.
What if the world's oldest epic poem holds secrets that speak directly to us today? Imagine unlocking a story written more than 4,000 years ago that echoes with raw human emotions, friendship, loss, and the ultimate quest for meaning beyond death. Andrew George, one of the foremost experts on this ancient masterpiece, has spent decades wrestling with its mysteries. Now, before his time runs out, he urges us to listen carefully, to hear not just a tale of kings and gods, but a powerful reflection of our shared humanity. Rediscovery of Gilgamesh. Buried beneath the sands of ancient Mesopotamia, the clay tablets containing the Epic of Gilgamesh lay forgotten for thousands of years. The story of their rediscovery reads like a thrilling detective saga, unfolding across continents and centuries. In the mid-19th century, archaeologists began excavating the ruins of Nineveh, the once great Assyrian city near modern Mosul, Iraq. These explorations unearthed the legendary library of King Ashurbanipal, a treasure trove of thousands of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform script. Among these artifacts were fragments of a mysterious epic poem, until then unknown to modern civilization. The tablets were carefully preserved under collapsed palace ruins, but their meanings remained a secret, locked in wedge-shaped marks. It wasn't until 1872 that a breakthrough occurred. George Smith, a self-taught Assyriologist working at the British Museum, made the astonishing discovery of a flood narrative remarkably similar to the biblical story of Noah. Smith's revelation was so colossal that it virtually forced the religious and the scientific circles to have identical reactions. He revealed to the Society of Biblical Archaeology in London on December 3rd that the Babylonian flood narrative was centuries older than the biblical one. This not only went against the religious convictions of the Victorian age, but also gave a clue to the unlocking of ancient literature for the scholars and theologians. Smith's next year's trip to Nineveh, financed by the Daily Telegraph, was to the recovery of the missing pieces that had the complete flood narrative and the Gilgamesh epic firmly established as among the oldest literary treasures of mankind. Unfortunately, Smith didn't have a long life. He died when he was only 36, and at that time, he was on his third expedition, which left a lot of the epic still to be uncovered and reconstructed. Still, his contribution to the field was a major factor in creating a global interest in the ancient texts of Mesopotamia and their rich narratives. Since then, the Gilgamesh story was no longer just a forgotten relic. It was a means of looking into the past, the cultures, and the universal human problems. The Epic of Gilgamesh, which had been mute for millennia, slowly started to speak again through the commitment of scholars. It was not just a historical relic anymore, but rather an eternal narrative that was the choice of the readers all over the world. Still, the path from disconnected pieces to a unified plot was not yet finished and demanded on the part of the translators in-depth linguistic competence and cultural insight. All of this points out to the figure who is now the modern protector of these old writings, Andrew George, whose scholarly work has given the epic's ultimate English version and made its message very clear. The life and work of Andrew George remind us that ancient stories can still carry urgent truths for the present. Andrew George's contribution. Andrew George emerged as one of the leading specialists in Assyriology and the Epic of Gilgamesh through decades of dedicated research. His work stands out not only for its scholarly precision, but also for its accessibility to general readers. George painstakingly reconstructed the most complete, accurate version of the epic available today, incorporating every known fragment. In doing so, he has breathed life back into a story many thought lost forever. What distinguishes George's translation is his commitment to letting the ancient Mesopotamian voice speak authentically. Unlike earlier translators, who who often shaped the epic through modern cultural lenses or imposed their own interpretations, George approached the text with rigorous philological discipline. His deep expertise in Akkadian and Sumerian languages allowed him to reveal nuances in the original words that had previously gone unnoticed. George's 2003 translation for Penguin Classics has been the definitive English edition from the start.
In 2003, there were 217 sources extant, 184 from the first millennium.
The book has very long notes and comments which assist the reader understand the wider cultural, historical, and literary contexts of the epic. Moreover, he shows the narrative in its own right, and also the development of the story through different centuries and empires. In this manner, he links the past and the present, thus engaging current audiences with the ancient world. The phrase, "Before I die, please listen," which is often linked to George's work, reveals the urgency and gravity of the modern-day sharing of ancient wisdom that the translator feels. To him, the Gilgamesh epic is, first of all, a literary relic, an archaeological find. It is, above all, a story of human beings that is powerful enough to transmit wisdom, grief, and hope to modern times. George's sacrifice is a doorway through which one can enter and ponder over death and life's meaning with the help of nearly 5,000-year-old wisdom. Through the years, George has emphasized that the Gilgamesh epic is not only the tale of kings and gods, but a projection of the human condition. The translator has revealed the main themes of friendship, loss, and the quest for the meaning of life, which are not only the chief themes but also the most concerning ones to modern readers. The epic's hard, nubbly heart has also been pointed out by George as a way to draw the audience into its complexity, its ambiguities, as well as its raw emotional power. In the case of George, the scholarly journey is not only marked by academic achievements, the one who is close to humankind with its ancient stories in the most genuine way. When George speaks of the scenes that he favors the most, the wild cedar forest, as well as the touching friendship of Gilgamesh and Enkidu, his enthusiasm for the epic is revealed. His effort makes the past feelings and understandings nearly inseparable from the present ones. The epic itself, however, did not begin as a single unified story but evolved over centuries, revealing the rich layers of cultural memory embedded in the text. Evolution of the epic. The Epic of Gilgamesh, as we know it today, is the result of an extraordinary literary process spanning thousands of years. It began not as one complete poem, but as a collection of 5 independent Sumerian poems dating back to roughly 2100 BCE. These early narratives celebrated the legendary king of Uruk but were performed separately, often in royal courts under different rulers like King Shulgi. Over time, the stories were preserved and copied in scribal schools, particularly in ancient cities like Nippur, where young scribes learned their craft by transcribing oral tales. A key transition occurred around 1800 BCE with the Old Babylonian version,
and razed the city, and then scattered the ruins, so no other city would follow in Babylon's footsteps.
an early attempt to unify the stories under one coherent narrative known as Surpassing All Other Kings. This version was written in Akkadian, marking an important linguistic and cultural shift. Political and social upheavals in Mesopotamia later influenced further changes. By the end of the 18th century BCE, many southern Mesopotamian cities had been abandoned, and the scribal academies there closed. The literary tradition moved northward, with Babylonian versions of Gilgamesh proliferating in various forms and dialects. These evolving texts reflect how shifting powers and cultures continually reshaped the epic. A defining moment came between 1300 and 1000 BCE, when Sinlik-Unini, a Babylonian scholar, compiled the version that would become the standard Babylonian epic. Far from simply copying earlier texts, he synthesized multiple oral and written traditions, crafting a narrative that addressed the literary and philosophical concerns of his time. This version, beginning with the phrase, "He who saw the deep," added depth and coherence to the tale. About 2/3 of the longer 12-tablet version has been preserved. The most extensive surviving copy was found in the mid-19th century in the library of King Ashurbanipal at Nineveh, which was from the 7th century BCE. These tablets formed the basis of Andrew George's ultimate modern translation and analysis. The standard Babylonian version gives a coherent narrative, the main 11 tablets depicting the transformation of Gilgamesh from a proud and oppressive king to a wise and nice one who accepts his limitations and the legacy of death. The 12th tablet, though, is treated differently and is seen by some as a later appendix. It is a literal version of an older Sumerian story that introduces some contradictions in the characters of the main narrative. The scholars regard this as an interruption of the meticulously developed epic's story arc. The tablets present Gilgamesh to us through his relationships, his adventures, and his philosophical struggles, all these against a background of gods, monsters, and mythic landscapes. The recent find of further fragments of the tablets keeps on adding to this portrait, and they offer the new details such as the very vivid depiction of the cedar forest and its guardian, Humbaba. These contributions are a proof that the epic was alive and dynamic even in ancient times. Each new generation that encounters Gilgamesh shapes and reshapes its meaning, bridging the gap between ancient and modern lives. Gilgamesh's story and themes. At its core, the Epic of Gilgamesh tells a deeply human story, full of friendship, loss, heroism, and a desperate pursuit of something beyond mortality. Gilgamesh begins as a proud and ruthless king of Uruk.
That Gilgamesh was a historical person and the 5th king of Uruk, who reigned in the 26th century BCE.
Exerting power without restraint, even to the detriment of his people. To challenge his arrogance, the gods create Enkidu, a wild man who becomes Gilgamesh's equal and companion. Their initial clash quickly transforms into a powerful friendship, one that tempers Gilgamesh's impulses and opens his heart to empathy. Together, Gilgamesh and Enkidu embark on perilous adventures, including their fateful journey to the cedar forest to confront Humbaba, a terrifying guardian appointed by the gods. Though victorious, their act of slaying Humbaba angers the gods and foreshadows tragedy. The bond they share is tested when Enkidu falls ill and dies, triggering a profound awakening in Gilgamesh. His friend's death forces him to confront the fragility of human life and the certainty of death, questions that had never troubled the mighty king before. Driven by grief and fear of his own mortality, Gilgamesh embarks on a quest to find Utnapishtim, the only human granted immortality after surviving a great flood. He journeys across wild landscapes, faces divine challenges, and endures tests that emphasize human limitations. For instance, Utnapishtim challenges Gilgamesh to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights, a task he fails immediately. This moment underscores a central theme. No human can escape the natural cycle of life, death, and sleep. The Epic of Gilgamesh still appeals to today's readers because it is a mirror of human experiences throughout time. Its confrontation of loss, friendship, and the quest for meaning gets to the very core of human feelings. The epic's plot depicts human suffering and pain as unavoidable yet significant experiences in the passage of life. In a world that is mostly preoccupied with the pursuit of longevity and power over life and death, Gilgamesh is there to teach the secret of wisdom through acceptance. The bond between Gilgamesh and Enkidu is rather important, emphasizing how relationship and support from each other shape the personality. Enkidu's state and company of Gilgamesh evoke empathy in him. Conversely, Gilgamesh's might aids Enkidu in moving from savagery to culture. Their friendship mirrors the ancient Mesopotamian concept of friendship being a stabilizing force, which, although it has been many centuries since, still touches people deeply. Gilgamesh's mourning for his friend Enkidu, even after death, portrays how love and loss determine one's humanity. He becomes a myth-like character during his crying over the loss of his friend, Yet, at the same time, the story goes through an emotional, meditative process on death. This awareness brings about a transformation in Gilgamesh's character from an inconsiderate monarch to a ruler who represents all those that fight against the limitations of life and strive to live meaningfully. The epic's focus on mortality and leadership opens the door to its next profound insight: how Gilgamesh's understanding of power shifts in the wake of loss and acceptance. Mortality and leadership. The journey of Gilgamesh profoundly reshapes his understanding of what it means to be a leader and human. Early in the epic, he is portrayed as two-thirds divine and one-third human, but his divine nature does not spare him from cruelty or egotism. His rule is marked by dominance and self-interest, characteristics that provoke tension with his subjects and the gods. However, his experiences, especially the death of Enkidu, trigger a transformation from despotic king to wise ruler who appreciates the responsibilities and fragility inherent in leadership. This evolution reflects a fundamental shift in Mesopotamian ideas about power. Gilgamesh learns that true leadership goes beyond physical strength or conquests. It requires empathy, wisdom, and an awareness of mortality. The walls of Uruk emerge as metaphors for his lasting legacy, seen not merely as stone structures, but as symbols of culture, order, and the collective memory of a people. In this way, his legacy is secured not by his quest for eternal life, but by the imprint he leaves on his city and its future. Gilgamesh's acknowledgement that death is the share allotted to humanity by the gods deepens his insight into the human condition. His earlier denial of mortality fades as he accepts the inevitability shared by all people, regardless of status. This acceptance is a humbling recognition that even heroes must face the same end, making the quality of one's life and deeds more important than its length. Thus, mortality shifts from a curse to a defining feature that gives life urgency and meaning. Leadership in the epic, nevertheless, acquires a higher aspect of the spirit and a combination of responsibility with personal growth. The Epic of Gilgamesh tells a tale of a man whose death and suffering make him a mature person. It implies that a good king is one who can rule with kindness, that is the result of thorough understanding of life's limitations rather than with absolute power or fear. The theme of leadership is in direct alignment with the present-day discussions on leadership, where vulnerability and emotional intelligence are increasingly seen as important traits. Gilgamesh's friendship with Enkidu serves as the main driving force of his transformation, and, in turn, the friendship becomes a major factor that keeps a person changing, as the person tries to see himself or herself and his or her governing nature through the relationship. Enkidu plays the role of a gorgon that petrifies Gilgamesh's pride and brings him to the ties of society and the world of men. Their opposites, wild and civilized, strong and gentle, bring to the fore the equilibrium that the leaders must have, both in their personalities and in their interactions with people. The death of Enkidu compels Gilgamesh to face the emptiness that the disconnection with such an intimate relationship brings about. Gilgamesh's evolving awareness and the lessons he learns set the stage for understanding why Andrew George feels compelled to share this story with urgency and passion. Andrew George's urgency and message. Andrew George's connection to the Epic of Gilgamesh goes far beyond academic interest. It is a deeply personal mission. For decades, he has poured his life into translating and interpreting the epic, seeking to revive its authentic voice for modern readers. George often said, "Before I die, please listen," a plea that speaks to the urgency he feels about sharing the epic's timeless wisdom. To him, this ancient text is not just history, but a living conversation that calls us to reflect on life, death, and what truly matters. George views the Epic of Gilgamesh as a mirror reflecting universal human experiences. It confronts us with mortality, the pain of losing loved ones, and the quest for meaning in a fleeting existence. Despite being thousands of years old, the poem's emotions and questions resonate as vividly today as they did in ancient Mesopotamia. George believes that these connections remind us that, across time, humans have struggled with the same fears and hopes, making Gilgamesh a shared inheritance of the human spirit. He urges readers to embrace the epic's raw, untidy nature rather than seeking neat answers. Life, like Gilgamesh's story, is ambiguous, messy, and full of contradictions. George encourages us to engage with those complexities rather than ignore them. In his eyes, the true heart of the epic lies in its unvarnished humanity, the fears, doubts, and the eventual acceptance that shape all our lives. One of the deepest insights of George is the epic's invitation to live in the now. The narrative's message, reinforced by a tavern keeper's wise saying, prompts us to eat, drink, and enjoy life instead of chasing after immortality. George, very much impressed, compares this ancient mindfulness to the modern-day practice in very few cases, since it is still a hard lesson to learn for many. It is asking us to stop and instead find happiness in the small and short-lived moments we have. George further points out that the epic is a hard teacher of maturity through failure, loss, and suffering. He argues that sometimes the best way to grow is not through easy victories, but rather by grappling with the darkest and toughest sides of life. A lot of people try to run away from these trials thinking they are not necessary, but the epic proves to them otherwise, as it is through such troubles that one becomes wise and enlightened. He marvels at how the ancient thoughts have imparted this lesson to the present generation and continue to reveal their qualities of teaching us resilience and depth of character through centuries. The Epic of Gilgamesh is more than an ancient text. It's a timeless reflection on mortality, friendship, and what it means to live well. Andrew George's lifelong dedication helps this story speak across millennia, reminding us to cherish life's fleeting gifts and leave meaningful legacies. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that connect the past with our present. And check out the next video on your screen.